A glass of cold water hit Serena straight in the face. It came from the woman who was supposed to love her more than anyone in the world, her stepmother, Judith. The kitchen went silent. Water dripped from Serena's chin onto the floor. Her little brother Felix stood frozen in the doorway, his cereal spoon still halfway to his mouth. Serena didn't flinch. She had stopped flinching years ago. All she had done was ask if she could use the car to drive to her university interview in Halifax. That was enough to set Judith off. "You think you're better than us?" Judith hissed. "You think some fancy school is going to change what you are? You're nothing, Serena. You've always been nothing. And you'll stay here and work at the cannery like everybody else in this town." Serena wiped the water from her eyes with the back of her hand. Behind Judith, her father Glenn stood leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching the whole thing without saying a word. He looked tired. He always looked tired. But tired was not the same as innocent. His silence had been Judith's permission for 12 years. Serena was 26. She had been 9 when her real mother passed away from cancer. For almost a year after the funeral, it had been just her and Glenn. Those months were quiet and sad, but they were safe. Then Judith arrived. She moved into the house on Birch Hill Road in Port Mercer, Nova Scotia, carrying 2 suitcases and a smile that disappeared the moment Glenn left for his shift at the lumber mill. Within weeks, the woman who had been so sweet and charming in front of Glenn transformed into someone Serena barely recognized. Judith controlled everything. She decided what Serena ate, what she wore, when she could speak, and when she had to be silent. If Serena talked back, there were consequences. A slap, a missed dinner, being locked in the basement until Glenn came home. And when Glenn did come home, Judith always had an explanation ready. She fell. She was being dramatic. You know how girls her age are. The worst part was that Glenn believed every word, or maybe he chose to believe. Serena never knew which was worse. By the time Felix was born, Serena was 12. She loved her brother from the first moment she held him. But Felix's arrival also sealed something in her mind. Glenn now had a new child, a new family, a new beginning. Serena was the leftover from a life he wanted to forget. She could see it in the way he looked at her sometimes, like she was a reminder of pain he had already buried. Still, Serena refused to break. While other girls in Port Mercer dropped out of school to work at the fish plant or marry young, Serena studied. She studied in the bathroom with the door locked. She studied under her blanket with a flashlight, after Judith turned the power off in her room. She studied during her lunch breaks at the cannery, where Judith forced her to work weekends starting at age 15. When her guidance counselor told her she had been accepted to a business program at Dalhousie University with a partial scholarship, Serena cried for the first time in years. Not from sadness. From the shock of realizing that escape was actually possible. But Judith had other plans. "I already told Harlan's family you'd be coming to dinner on Saturday," Judith said one evening while Glenn sat at the table eating his pot roast. "They're good people. His mother is on the church board. His father owns 3 fishing boats. A girl like you should be grateful anyone's interested at all." Serena set her fork down. "Who is Harlan?" Judith smiled. Her smile never reached her eyes. "He's the man you're going to marry." The room tilted. Serena looked at Glenn. "Dad," she said, "please tell me this isn't real." Glenn didn't look up from his plate. "Just meet the boy, Serena. It won't kill you." Those 7 words killed something inside her anyway. She realized then that Glenn would never stand up for her. He would never choose her over his own comfort. His love for her existed, maybe, somewhere deep and useless, like a light at the bottom of the ocean. It was there, but it could never reach the surface. Saturday came whether Serena wanted it to or not. Harlan Burke arrived at the house in a pickup truck so clean it looked like it had never touched a gravel road. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a jaw that could have been carved from granite. Handsome, if you only looked at the outside. He stepped through the front door like he already owned the place. "So this is her," Harlan said, looking Serena up and down the way a man inspects something he's considering buying. "She'll do." Judith beamed. "Isn't she lovely? And she's a hard worker too. She'll keep your house running like clockwork." Nobody asked Serena what she thought. Nobody asked if she wanted to sit at the table or if she wanted to run. She sat there through the entire dinner while Harlan's mother, a sharp-boned woman named Greta, evaluated every bite Serena took and every word she spoke. Greta had the kind of authority that filled a room and squeezed everyone else into corners. Even Judith seemed smaller around her. After dinner, Serena found a moment alone in the kitchen. Felix appeared behind her. "Are you really going to marry that guy?" Felix whispered. He was 14 now, lanky and awkward, with their mother's gentle eyes. "No," Serena said. "I'm not." "Then what are you going to do?" Serena looked at her little brother. The same brother who had once crawled into her bed during thunderstorms because Judith wouldn't comfort him. The same brother who had secretly brought her food when Judith punished her by skipping her meals. "I'm going to leave," she said. 3 days later, at 4 in the morning, Serena packed a single bag. She had saved $1,100 from her cannery wages over the past 2 years, hiding the bills inside a hollowed-out copy of Anne of Green Gables that sat on the shelf Judith never touched. She tucked the money into her jacket pocket, zipped the bag shut, and crept toward the back door. The floorboard near the kitchen creaked. Serena froze. "Where do you think you're going?" It was Judith. She was standing in the hallway in her bathrobe, arms crossed, blocking the path to the door. Behind her, Glenn appeared, rubbing his eyes. "She's trying to run," Judith said flatly. "Just like I told you she would." Glenn looked at Serena. The disappointment on his face cut deeper than any slap Judith had ever given her. "Get back to your room," Glenn said. "No." The word came out of Serena's mouth before she could stop it. Both Glenn and Judith stared at her. "No," Serena repeated. "I'm leaving. I've been accepted to university. I have money saved. I have a plan. And I am not marrying Harlan Burke." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Judith stepped forward and grabbed Serena's bag, yanking it out of her hands. She unzipped it and dumped everything onto the kitchen floor. Clothes, books, toiletries scattered across the tiles. "You're not going anywhere," Judith said. "You belong to this family. You owe this family." "I don't owe you anything," Serena said. Her voice was steady even though her hands were trembling. "You've taken everything from me since I was 9 years old. My childhood, my dignity, my relationship with my own father. You don't get to take my future too." Judith raised her hand. But before the slap could land, Felix stepped between them. "Don't touch her," Felix said. His voice cracked, half boy and half man. He was shaking, but he didn't move. The silence that followed was suffocating. Judith slowly lowered her hand. She looked at Glenn, waiting for him to take control. But Glenn just stood there, paralyzed, caught between the woman he had married and the daughter he had failed. Serena knelt down, gathered her things, and stuffed them back into the bag. Then she stood, kissed Felix on the forehead, and walked out the front door. Nobody followed her. The Greyhound to Halifax left at 6:15. Serena sat in the back row and watched Port Mercer shrink in the window until it disappeared behind the trees. She didn't cry. She had used up all her tears years ago. Halifax was enormous and terrifying and beautiful all at once. Serena found a room in a shared house near the university, started classes, and picked up shifts at a restaurant called the Wooden Spoon in the North End. The owner, a retired chef named Bev, was a stout woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled back in a bun and a laugh that could shake the walls. Bev took one look at Serena on her first day, saw the dark circles under her eyes and the way she flinched when someone raised their voice and said, "You look like you could use a proper meal and somebody who doesn't yell. Sit down, eat first, work later." Bev became the closest thing to a mother Serena had known in 17 years. She taught Serena how to make chowder from scratch, how to deal with rude customers without losing her composure, and how to believe that kindness didn't always come with a price tag attached. Over the next 3 years, Serena poured herself into school and work. She graduated near the top of her class. She saved every dollar she could. She called Felix once a week, always when she knew Judith wouldn't be home. Felix told her the house was quieter without her. He told her Glenn barely spoke anymore. He told her Harlan had married someone else, a girl named Dawn from the next town over, and that the marriage was already falling apart because Harlan turned out to be exactly the kind of man Serena had suspected. Controlling, jealous, and mean behind closed doors. Karma, Serena thought. But she didn't say it out loud. By the time had opened a small bakery on Barrington Street called Flour and Fortitude. It started as a tiny operation. Just her, an oven, and a dream scribbled on a napkin. But the business grew. Her sourdough became famous in the neighborhood. Her butter tarts brought in customers from Dartmouth and Bedford. Within 2 years, she had hired 3 employees and was looking into opening a second location. It was during this time that she met Owen. Owen Calloway was a carpenter who had been hired to build new shelving for the bakery. He was quiet, deliberate, and had the kind of hands that moved carefully, as if everything he touched deserved respect. He didn't talk much, but when he did, every word mattered. On his 3rd day of work, he brought Serena a coffee without asking how she took it. Black, no sugar. The exact way she drank it. "Lucky guess," he said when she stared at him. She didn't believe in luck, but she smiled anyway. Their relationship grew slowly, like bread rising. Owen never pushed. He never demanded. He never raised his voice. When Serena told him pieces of her past, not everything, just enough, he listened without interrupting. When she finished, he didn't offer advice or pity. He simply said, "You're here now. That's what matters." They married in a small ceremony on the waterfront. Bev made the cake. Felix came down from Port Mercer and walked Serena down the aisle because Glenn said he couldn't make it. He didn't give a reason. Serena knew the reason was Judith. For a while, everything was good, better than good. Serena and Owen moved into a house in the South End. A year later, their daughter Wren was born. She was small and fierce, and had Owen's calm eyes and Serena's stubborn mouth. The bakery continued to grow. Life felt for the first time like something Serena had chosen for herself. Then Owen got the contract. A development company offered him a massive job, building custom cabinetry for a new luxury condo project in downtown Halifax. The money was more than he had ever made. Owen hesitated at first. The hours would be brutal. He'd be away from home constantly. But Serena encouraged him. She believed in him the way he had always believed in her. The first few months were manageable. Owen left early and came home late, but he still made time for Ren on weekends. He still kissed Serena goodnight even when he was exhausted. But gradually something shifted. The project consumed him. He started missing dinners. Then he missed Ren's second birthday because of a deadline. He stopped asking Serena about the bakery. He stopped asking her about anything. When Serena tried to talk to him about it, Owen shut down. "I'm doing this for us," he said. "Why can't you just appreciate that instead of making me feel guilty?" The words stung because they sounded reasonable on the surface. But underneath, Serena could feel the distance growing. It wasn't just physical absence. It was emotional abandonment. The man sitting across from her at the kitchen table was wearing Owen's face, but the warmth behind his eyes had gone somewhere she couldn't follow. Then came the phone call. One of Serena's employees, a young woman named Kiara, called her late on a Friday evening. "Serena, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but I saw Owen tonight at the dockhouse with a woman. They were sitting really close. I thought you should know." Serena's stomach dropped. She thanked Kiara and hung up. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for 20 minutes. When Owen came home that night, smelling like beer and someone else's perfume, Serena was waiting in the living room with the lights off. "Who is she?" Serena asked. Owen stopped in the doorway. "What are you talking about? Don't lie to me, Owen. I have spent my entire life surrounded by liars. You are the one person I trusted to be different. So I am asking you one time, who is she?" The silence lasted long enough for Serena to get her answer. Her name was Tessa. She was a project manager on the condo development. Owen swore it had only happened once. Then he admitted it had been going on for 3 months. Then he cried and said he was sorry, and that he still loved Serena and that it meant nothing. "If it meant nothing," Serena said quietly, "then why did you choose it over everything we built?" Owen had no answer. Serena did not scream. She did not throw dishes. She did not beg him to stay. She had learned long ago that begging changed nothing. Instead, she walked into Ren's room, lifted her sleeping daughter from the crib, and carried her out to the car. "Where are you going?" Owen called from the porch. Serena didn't answer. She buckled Ren into the car seat, started the engine, and drove to Bev's house. Bev opened the door at midnight without asking a single question. She simply stepped aside, pointed to the spare bedroom, and said, "Stay as long as you need." The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Serena kept the bakery. Owen kept the house. They shared custody of Ren. It was clean and quiet, the way endings rarely are. In the weeks that followed, Serena threw herself into work. The bakery became her anchor. She expanded the menu, started offering catering, and partnered with local farms for her ingredients. Flour and Fortitude became more than a bakery. It became a gathering place. A spot where people came not just for bread but for belonging. Bev stopped by every morning for coffee and a cinnamon roll, and told anyone who would listen that Serena was the most stubborn and brilliant woman she had ever met. One afternoon, Felix called. "Dad had a stroke," he said. His voice sounded distant. Serena gripped the phone. "How bad?" "Bad. He's at the hospital in Yarmouth. The doctors say he might not walk again. Judith's here, but she's useless. She just sits in the waiting room complaining about the parking." Despite everything, despite the years of silence and the years of being chosen last, Serena felt her chest tighten. She closed the bakery early, dropped Ren off at Bev's, and drove 4 hours through the rain to Yarmouth. When she walked into the hospital room, Glenn was lying in bed with tubes running from his arms and a monitor beeping beside him. He looked like he had aged 20 years. His hair was completely white. His hands, which had once been strong enough to split firewood, trembled on the blanket. Serena sat down beside him. "Hi, Dad," she said. Glenn's eyes opened slowly. He saw her face. Something broke inside him. His chin quivered. A tear ran down the side of his face and disappeared into the pillow. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The words came out broken and rough, as if they had been trapped inside him for decades and had finally clawed their way out. "For what?" Serena asked. She needed to hear him say it. "For everything. For not protecting you. For letting Judith treat you the way she did. For standing there and doing nothing while my own daughter was suffering right in front of me. I was a coward, Serena. I was so afraid of being alone that I let a cruel woman raise my child, and I will never forgive myself for that." Serena held his hand. It was the first time she had touched her father in 7 years. His skin was thin and cool against hers. She didn't say it's okay because it wasn't okay. What had happened to her was not okay and would never be okay. But she understood something now that she hadn't understood before. Her father was not a monster. He was a weak man who had made terrible choices because weakness was the only thing he knew. He had loved her in the only broken way he was capable of loving. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was real. "I'm not ready to forgive you yet," Serena said. "But I'm here." Glenn nodded. "That's more than I deserve." Felix arrived a few minutes later with 2 coffees from the Tim Hortons across the street. The three of them sat together in the hospital room as the rain hammered against the window. Nobody said much. But for the first time in years, the silence between them was not heavy. It was the quiet of people who had finally stopped pretending. Judith never came into the room while Serena was there. She stayed in the waiting area, scrolling through her phone, as if her husband's possible death was an inconvenience interrupting her afternoon. When Serena passed her on the way out, their eyes met for a brief moment. Judith opened her mouth to speak, but Serena kept walking. She had nothing left to say to that woman, not anger, not hatred, not even pity, just nothing. 2 weeks later, Felix called again with news. Judith had drained Glenn's savings account while he was recovering. Nearly $40,000, gone. She had transferred it into a separate account under her own name. When Glenn confronted her from his hospital bed, Judith told him he should be grateful she had stayed as long as she had. Then she packed her things and left Port Mercer entirely. The police got involved. It turned out Judith had done this before, to a previous partner in New Brunswick. She had a pattern: marry someone vulnerable, isolate them from their family, control the household, and eventually take whatever she could. The RCMP charged her with fraud and theft. She was arrested in Moncton 3 weeks later. When Serena heard the news, she felt something she didn't expect. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just exhaustion. The kind that comes when a storm you've been bracing against for years finally passes and your body realizes how tired it actually is. Glenn recovered slowly. Felix moved him into a small apartment near the waterfront in Lunenburg. Serena visited when she could, bringing Ren along. Watching her father hold his granddaughter for the first time, Serena saw something in his face she hadn't seen since she was 9 years old. Tenderness. Real, unguarded, heartbreaking tenderness. One autumn morning, Serena stood behind the counter at Flower and Fortitude, shaping dough with her hands while Ren sat on a stool nearby, drawing pictures with crayons. The bakery was warm. The smell of fresh bread filled every corner. Through the window, she could see the leaves on Barrington Street turning gold and red. Bev walked in, shaking rain off her umbrella. "You look different today," Bev said. "Different how?" "Lighter," Bev replied. "Like you finally put something down." Serena smiled. "Maybe I did." She thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The water thrown in her face. The locked doors. The night spent studying under a blanket. The Greyhound bus pulling away from Port Mercer. Bev's kitchen table. Owen's hands building shelves. Ren's first cry. The divorce papers. Her father's tears in a hospital bed. Every single thing, the cruelty and the kindness, the betrayals and the blessings, had shaped the woman standing here now. Flower on her apron, her daughter beside her, her life finally and fully her own. She had not arrived here because the world had been fair to her. The world had been anything but fair. She arrived here because she refused to let the people who hurt her decide who she became. Every time someone tried to shrink her, she grew. Every time someone tried to silence her, she spoke louder. Every time someone tried to make her believe she was nothing, she built something that proved she was everything. Ren looked up from her drawing. "Mama, can I have a cinnamon roll?" Serena laughed. The sound surprised her. It was full and warm and completely unforced. "Of course you can, sweetheart." She pulled a fresh roll from the tray, set it on a plate, and placed it in front of her daughter. Then she leaned down and kissed the top of Ren's head, breathing in the smell of her hair, holding on to the moment the way you hold on to something precious that you know you've earned. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight pushed through the clouds and landed on the wet sidewalk, turning the puddles into mirrors. People passed by the window, heading wherever their lives were taking them. And inside the bakery, Serena Whitfield's daughter ate a cinnamon roll while her mother shaped the next loaf of bread. And neither of them needed anything else in the world.